Welcome to the Shabby And Man podcast. We are partners, parents, podcasters, broadcasters,
and everything else in between. And what an eventful week we've had. Well, weekend especially. It's been, we've just celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary.
22 saal.
22 years of wedded bliss. Now, of course, I use the word bliss very loosely.
Very, very loosely. But we've had, I think it's a landmark wedding anniversary. 2 decades and 2 years.
In bingo parlance, it's what? 2 fat ducks, 2 little ducks?
Ducks? Are you trying to say something?
22 2 little ducks.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's the box we've crossed out on the bingo slip. And there's, especially as you said, talking about eventful weekends, there's been a lot of action in the world of sport. There's been book launches that we've gone to, plays that we've seen, and of course, not to forget 20 years of 9/11 as well. So we'll be talking about all of that. Let's start with...
It's a busy week. It's been a busy week.
Very busy week, very busy, culminating in a busier weekend. Let's start with the 22 years of wedded bliss.
कहाँ से शुरू करूँ?
कहाँ से शुरू करूँ is not so important, but कहाँ पर आज आप हैं is my question to you. Are you the sort of person? Now, we've been married 22 years. We've probably known each other 25. We've been parents for...
It's okay. No need to rub it in.
Yeah, but are you the sort of person who makes long-term plans? Do you think, not just शादी के मामले में, but do you actually look at life and think कि 5 साल में मुझे ये करना है, 10 साल में I should be here, by the time I'm 50 or 60 or 70, these are my goals that I definitely need to take?
I can't understand why someone who's been married to me for 22 years is asking me this question. Do you not know me yet?
Only for the benefit of the podcast.
I don't know what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
But it reminds me of a very famous French president. I'm thinking of Nicolas Sarkozy here. Did he not once say that if by the time you're 50 and you don't own a Rolex, you haven't made it?
Oh dear.
Let's just put it that way.
It wasn't a paid partnership with Rolex, was it? We never checked.
No, but anyway, in my defense, I'm not into Rolexes, Panerai, IWC, Breitling, that kind of stuff. And सुना मैंने कि शादी के wedding anniversaries में तोहफा देते हैं. And I believe that watches are a very common gift.
Yeah, and 22 years, I believe copper is the theme for the 22nd wedding anniversary.
Copper as in copper pipe.
Yeah, copper pipe, or
Copper Dog is a whiskey.
Yeah, or a minted edition of David Copperfield, if our local Oxfam has it.
Well, I better just Google if they have copper-plated Patek Philippe watches.
In your dreams, I'm sure they do. But yeah, 22 years, and it's been, I think it's been quite amazing, ish. In the sense that we've had all the ups and downs.
Say what you want to say. Don't just hide it. Don't just brush it aside.
We've had all the ups and downs that everyone does. Every couple does, I'm pretty sure. And still standing. What is that? Is it an Elton John song? Isn't it?
It is an Elton John
I'm
song.
Still standing.
Ups and downs. More ups or more downs?
I don't know.
Or was that for another podcast?
Yeah, it evens out at the end. It all levels out. So we started out by celebrating our wedding anniversary, and
you're struggling to think of things to say, I see today.
No, I'm trying to think of what is the first thing.
Look, if you can't be complimentary, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No, it's all right. If I can't be honest after 22 years, what chance does this marriage even have? But no, it's been fantastic. And to celebrate our 22nd wedding anniversary, we did something that both of us enjoy tremendously, which is go and watch a play in London's West End.
Yeah, we saw a play in West End, and you beat me to it. You actually saw 2 plays this
I
week.
did. Yeah. Well, one wasn't a play, one was a book launch. We'll get to that later. But we saw a brilliant play, Prince of Egypt, and I think every time we watch something in the West End, it brings home the fact that the London stage is something spectacularly special.
I think there's a massive cast, about 40 people.
Yeah.
When everyone's singing, especially when there's a musical and everyone's singing together, it is quite... makes your rongte khade ho jate hain.
Yeah, and it was an iconic theatre as well, the Dominion. So we did that whole, pre-theatre shenanigans, and then really had a great day out, let's put it that way. And one of the big advantages of being married for 22 years, we've now got children who are quite independent and capable of looking after themselves, so we don't have to arrange for either people to come and babysit them or constantly worry about have they done this, have they done that.
Why you did is that's exactly what you did in the interval.
No,
you phoned them up and said, have you had this, have you done this, have you opened the fridge, have you put this away?
No, that's just kind of checking up on, not so much checking up, but just reminding them what they needed to do. But I think that was a very special day, very beautiful day.
Yeah, while you're making me stand in the queue for some Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah, it's part of the theatre experience.
I can't believe how small the pots are. Anyway, that's a different story.
And the other
pots
thing,
of ice cream, that is, by the way.
Yeah.
In case anyone thinks that I was talking about the loo.
Too much information. But there are a couple of things.
Do you know, have you heard of these Toto loos? There are these Japanese loos that do everything. I don't want to get into detail, but after you've kind of cleaned yourself, this hot air comes up and dries you as well. But anyway, that's a different story.
That is a completely different story. It's definitely not another podcast. But there are a few things, a few rituals that you must indulge when you're at the theatre. Haagen-Dazs interval ke time pe.
We're only saying Haagen-Dazs because that's what they had. I'm sure other ice creams are available.
And buying the program as well, which you read only for the first 5 minutes, and after that you have no idea where these programs disappear. Once in a while when we do a thorough spring clean of the house, that's when we find about tons of them.
You didn't actually know that this was it's not a Disney, I think it's a DreamWorks Pixar kind of movie.
I didn't know it was a film as well, but it was brilliantly done. So Prince of Egypt, back at the theatre in post-COVID times, it's all good. You know, speaking of returning to old rituals in a post-COVID world, like going to the theatre, like you mentioned, I went for a book launch as well, a very special book launch. This was at the Apollo Theatre as well, जहाँ पे normally plays होते हैं, musicals होते हैं. And this was, of course...
For anyone outside London, this is all in the heart of London. One is in Tottenham Court Road, Oxford Circus.
Yeah.
One is in
Shaftesbury, Piccadilly. Yeah, these are the big theatres, big iconic theatres. Now, I went for Jay Rayner's book launch. Would you like to tell everybody who Jay Rayner is, in case people are kind of scratching their heads?
I think he's very England specific. He's a food critic. He writes for The Guardian, The Observer.
Yeah.
And
he calls himself a journalist as well.
I think he's sometimes comes on as a judge on MasterChef as well.
Yes, he does. And he's someone that
he loves his food.
He loves his food. We've both been reading his food columns for a long time. I'm a big fan of his writing. And I think, as with anyone else, whether they're reviewing films or restaurants, if you have the gift of the gab, then you make it that much more exciting. You know, even if you're not really into the dish they may be describing or the movie they may be talking about. Jay Rayner is one of those people, I feel. And he's our generation. That helps as well.
He actually has a food podcast as well.
He does. So he was launching his new book, Chewing the Fat, and he decided to do a Q&A in a theatre. And so I went along and it was fantastic. एक चीज़ जो मुझे बहुत पसंद आई, you know, पुराने ज़माने में if you went to a live concert, if the audience had the chance to participate and if the audience was given the chance to ask a question, you'd normally have a presenter or an anchor who would pass a mic around. This time around, it was my first time being a part of a book launch where we could be interactive by logging into an app live and posting our questions, which means you could ask questions anonymously and naturally, as is the case with so many people. You know, they ask the rudest and meanest questions, things that make you laugh.
This book launch was actually hosted by a comedian, Joe Brand hosted.
Joe Brand, yes.
So I'm just imagining it must have been quite rude anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they're both quite...
the odd swear word here and there.
The odd. But yeah, it was funny and it was done in the right spirit. And so we could all pose questions and they would come up on a screen. Naturally, they were being filtered for bad language and things like that. So it was fascinating, because that is when I feel, no matter how much you've prepared for the evening, because he ended up reading a few passages from his new book, and Joe Brand had 2-3 papers in front of her because she knew what she was going to ask him. No matter how much you've prepared for the evening, it is the live questions that are coming through, your response to those, that is what brings out the true journalist or writer or whatever it is. And that is what gives us an insight into who he is as a man, as a person, when the mask comes off. It was absolutely fascinating. And you brought me another book the other day by Jay Rayner, not Chewing the Fat. Was it The Last Supper, right?
The Last something.
The Last Supper.
Yeah.
My Last Supper. And usme bhi, the stories are absolutely fascinating. You would think that here's a man who loves his food and he's just talking about showing off, talking about his wonderful experiences eating oysters here and this there and the best champagne and the best wine and all of that. Wo sab bhi hai. But it also gives you an insight into what he's done, his stats there, he's done his homework.
I always remember while reading his columns, he always makes a point of saying that he always pays for his meals, which is very important. I think if you're going to be a critic, once you start getting freebies,
which I think all the top critics do to be able to maintain your integrity,
freebies, then you can't.
Yeah,
you said you can't maintain your integrity.
Yeah, you can't be unbiased then, right? So he has in his book My Last Supper, where he's looked back on his life and he's talking about things that he would like to have as his last meal. He's also talking about he's looked at the stats, and I think this is mostly from America, about prisoners on death row and meals that they generally order. And it's amazing to see how many times KFC...
Let me guess, is it things like KFC and comfort food?
McDonald's and KFC and all crops up. He says, of course, there's no way of knowing whether they eat all of it, but they're given one last chance to have a meal that they would like, just as they're given a shave, and it's like a dignified whatever, but nonetheless, these are murderers and people who are on death row. So it's a book that talks about so much more than just food, which is what I love.
That's not the only thing you did.
What else did I do?
You went to see a cricket match?
I did. We were talking about this being a fascinating weekend of sport. Let's start with the cricket. मेरे को तो हमें उतनी जानकारी है नहीं, although उड़ती खबर आती है कानों में.
Yeah, because the final test, the final one was supposed to be played on Friday. That just passed, but it's got cancelled because of all sorts of COVID restrictions and complications. I think one of the physios got it. Not quite sure what's happening. There's another line saying that India wants to run back because the IPL is about to start
in Dubai
very soon, in 10 days or something. So that's one angle that people are trying to say, that's why India is very keen to go back. Well, I doubt it. I think they wanted to win, and win with style and go back.
What's the final score then? Where has it settled? Have they beaten? Have they drawn?
It was 2-1. This match is probably going to be played again. Maybe next year. There's a little window where India is back in England next year
to come and complete the series.
So, I mean, that's what I've heard. I'm sure someone will correct us.
Yeah. So I was there at the 4th test, on the 3rd day of the 4th test.
Now, I know there's two types of people. People who go to watch cricket.
Yeah.
And people who go there for the hospitality when they're invited.
That's right. I was invited. I was lucky enough to be invited to one of those really, really cushy hospitality boxes. And
so the people in the box with you, are they like cricket fans, or were they just there to khao pi or majo karo?
No, I think there was a mix. As you rightly said, there are people who are there to network, to say hello to their friends and get a bird's eye view of the proceedings. It really is beautifully positioned. And then there are those who are avid cricket fans. So beach mein, like you get the menu, khana is served, and
By the way, this was at the Oval.
This was at the Oval. So I caught up with a lot of my friends, media friends, which was fantastic, and I got to watch the cricket as well, which I have seen several times before. I mean, you've been to the Lords so many times, once with my father. I've been to Lords so many times. It was my first time at the Oval. And every time you watch cricket live, there are two things that hit you. First, when you're used to watching it on TV, I think the outfield looks like it's miles and miles. It isn't. It's quite an intimate space. And uska bilkul ulta, when you look at the wicket keeper, TV pe aise lagta hai he's standing right behind the batsman, especially if there's a stumping. You feel that he's just there, waiting to nudge the bail off. But in real life, especially if it's a fast bowler bowling, the wicketkeeper is some distance away. He's quite some distance away.
This happens with all sports. I remember the first time I went to see horse racing. The speed at which the horses go past you and the mud flying, it just blows your mind.
So you mean for races like the Ascot, you dress up, you take all the time to look your best and wear your hat and your fascinator and this and that and sip your champagne, all for that one nanosecond of horses actually.
Yeah, unless they're doing the circuit twice. And the same thing with cycling once. I saw this, it wasn't the Tour de France, but it was something similar. And they just whizzed past you. It was great.
I was just going to remind you that I think 2 years in succession, or maybe 3, and you didn't know this was happening at all. It was completely unplanned. You ended up being in West End when they had the nudist bike ride. Was it 2 or 3 years running?
Yes, 2 years. If you don't make it sound like it's 3 years running, I went there just by
That's
chance.
what I'm saying. No, it's not 3 successive years, but 3 times on 3 occasions you happened to be in West End when it happened to be the day. Obviously, it happens in the summer, so...
I think the first time we were surprised, but suddenly all these nude cyclists went past me.
Huh.
And I thought, hey, something is going on. Yeah, everyone is cheering and clapping. Some people just crossing the road and doing their shopping, and they did the whole of London, I think.
Is it for some cause or is it just for fun?
I'm not sure. I think it must be for some cause.
What cause can it possibly be? Allow us to be free.
No, I don't know. I was going to say it might be for some cancer charity or something, but I don't know. So I don't want to say those sort of things. Maybe they are just doing it because they're exhibitionists.
Yes. Let's look at the other 2 stories from the world of sport. Should we talk about the biggest one, which is Emma Raducanu and tennis, or you want to talk about your favorite, Lewis Hamilton, being involved in a horrific crash with his nemesis, Verstappen?
Yeah, so you can see how live this is because this all happened yesterday evening. And we're recording on a Monday morning.
Yeah. So it is, as we've always said, Formula One sport is one of those things where...
Let's talk about the tennis first, because she was amazing. And we also know that unfortunately Djokovic didn't manage to get his 21st Grand Slam.
So Emma Raducanu, I mean, suddenly we were told, those in the UK found out, I think it was Saturday morning we found out that they were actually going to show the match live because it was such a historic moment.
Kudos to Channel 4.
Yeah.
I think they paid something like $1 million to Prime Video. But absolutely worth it.
Absolutely worth it.
Everyone was watching Channel 4 that night.
Yeah, and such a beautiful moment, I feel, when you see someone you see her fulfill her dream, and you see there's someone who knows her craft, who's been so good, who's played consistently well, and she's just, at one hurdle away from achieving her ultimate dream.
It was a very exciting match. I think Leila Fernandez was amazing as well.
That's what made it amazing, right? Because even her opponent was well matched.
And what is really, it's not weird, but it makes you think twice, is the fact that they're both born in 2002.
Yeah.
How young is that?
And all the tennis greats who were commentating, from Martina Navratilova to Tim Henman to everybody else, they were saying that, forget about the fact that we were nowhere near where Emma Raducanu is when we were that age, but the fact that her game doesn't really have any flaws. All of them have the same concern. 2 things. Firstly, that her world will completely change overnight and she'll be inundated with sponsorship offers and this and that.
Today's paper actually says that she's on course, in line to make $1 billion.
$1 billion, did you say?
Yeah. $1 billion.
$1 billion or pounds or whatever it is.
She will be in Portugal because she's got a beautiful smile as well.
Yeah. So that's what they say, that she needs to have a core team that can take care of all of that and protect her from the financial aspect of what success on a global stage means, so that she can concentrate on her game.
I remember hearing that, and the other worry is, of course, injury.
Injury, that all sportsmen worry about. If she can, maintain her health and fitness and continue to play at the level that she's playing right now, the world is her oyster.
That reminds me of probably someone who has defied everything, and that is Cristiano Ronaldo. He came back this weekend for Manchester United at the age of 36.
Which for a footballer is quite old, right?
Which is very old for a footballer. And he scored 2 goals as well. I mean, he just breaks records after records.
Yeah.
Now, we could have a whole podcast on who is the actual GOAT. Is it Messi or Ronaldo? But you have to hand it to him.
And I believe he is the most followed person, the most followed human being on Instagram.
Is he?
Yes, he has the most number of followers. It's a ridiculous number, but then I'm sure he deserves every bit of his glory. And when you look at somebody like Emma Raducanu, especially jab hamare bacche hain, our son is not that much younger than her. That's when it really puts you, everything falls into perspective, and you think how young she still is and how wonderful it must be. And the next morning, Sunday morning, they went to her tennis academy where she trained all her life in Orpington, was it? No.
Bromley in Kent.
Bromley. And that's what the coaches said, that, of course, the world is waking up to the magic of Emma Raducanu now, but we've known for so many years that she really had it in her and she consistently worked towards
these kids,
her goal.
they're kind of discovered when they're like 6, 7, aren't they? I think she's already played Leila Fernandez once before as a junior when she was 15. So, you know.
And Jesse, यहाँ पे कहते हैं football mums. Do you think there might be tennis mums as well? There must be, right?
Of course.
So football mums, I mean, and football dads, I suppose, are those who take their children to, in come rain or shine, throughout their growing up years. Every weekend they take them to these.
We had many friends who did that.
Games and matches, yeah. We've not done, our kids have never played anything consistently. We've done our share of taking them for swimming and this and that, matches and birthdays and all the rest of it that primary school is all about. But yeah, I mean, it must be a proud moment for the parents. मुझे अजीब लगा though that her parents have not spoken yet. Nobody's been able to secure an interview from her parents yet. So I'm waiting to see.
I'm sure they will. They'll have to pay a lot of money probably for exclusive.
Because she said something which made me chuckle. She said that my father is very hard to please. But last night when I spoke to him, I mean, naturally, this time round he was impressed.
She also spoke to one of the TV channels in Mandarin because her mum is Chinese.
Which is amazing. It always impresses us when children speak a language that they normally wouldn't speak in this country. Okay, so let's wrap up with 20 years of 9/11. Saturday was 20 years of a tragedy that shook the world and changed the world, really. And for our generation, at least.
It's one of those moments where people say, where were you? You know, where were you when JFK got shot? Where were you when...
John Lennon,
yeah. Where were you in 1983 when McDonald invented the chicken McNugget?
Yeah, forget that. But it is one of those defining moments in history. I think for our children, that might be where were you when COVID struck? मुझे लगता है. Like in 9/11, 20 years have gone by in a flash. And incidentally, it's a day before our anniversary. When it happened, we'd been married just short of 2 years. Where were you? Tell me, what do you remember?
I know what you want to say. Why don't you tell everyone that we were, even though it was our wedding anniversary, one day before, we were in 2 different countries.
That's right. Because we'd got married in India, we lived in India for a bit.
We'd come here to see if we could move here.
Yeah. You'd come back home. For you, it was coming back home.
And you had to get a spouse visa.
I had to
go back.
Yeah. So on our second wedding anniversary, you were in London, I was in Delhi. What were you doing when you found out about 9/11? Let's put it that way. Think back to that day. When did you first hear about it? What happened?
I know, it was all over the news. We were just all stunned. I was actually at home that day. And
but did you hear it on the radio? Did you watch it on television?
I can't remember how I suddenly just heard it. So someone said, have you seen the news? And then you switch on the news. Must have heard on the radio first and switch on the news. And we were just transfixed. And how was it for you there in India? Yeah,
for us it was late evening. Because it was, I think, 9 o'clock America. So for us it was already late afternoon. Not late evening, late afternoon. And I remember I'd gone to do a voiceover and somebody mentioned that, there's been a plane crash in America. And as you normally, and somebody must have turned, because it was a TV channel, someone turned on the television and we were like, oh my God, shocking, how tragic. And just imagine, the people on the plane and the people in that building. And then everybody kind of went back to work because...
I do remember, I was watching it live. And at the time, you didn't really know what was happening.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching, and now there's been another plane.
That is when I think a chill set in everyone's heart because you knew it was premeditated. The first one, you had no idea about the Pentagon, you had no idea about the 4th plane. The first one was just, it looked like an extremely unfortunate tragedy. So, we saw the first one, everybody was talking because everybody was talking about it. This is obviously 20 years ago, pre-Twitter times. Otherwise, we could say it was trending and so the whole world came to know. That is how people find out breaking news these days. But it was only after a full day's work when I went home and I saw that my dad was still glued to the television saying that, did you hear about the 2nd plane and the 3rd? I think that is when, it was only after 3-4 hours had passed that people realized that this was not just a freak accident. This was a planned terror attack. And I think for all of us, travel rules changed, the way America retaliated changed world politics, so much changed. And your heart goes out to the people. There have been documentaries after documentaries, especially commemorating 20 years of 9/11. There's one I saw which said the president's war room. Absolutely bone-chilling,
It's strange actually because the other great terror attack that took place, again we were in 2 different countries. What was 26th of November in Mumbai.
Yeah.
You were shooting in Mumbai.
I was filming.
I was in London with the kids.
Yeah.
No, the kids were with your mom and dad.
Yeah, the kids were in India with me. I was lucky. I was due to shoot in Mumbai the next day, believe it or not. And our shoot got called off, so we went back to Bangalore. So it was very lucky. But then you were, again, as you're saying, you were here, we were there.
And whenever I was in Mumbai, I used to actually go to the Leopold Cafe.
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah, you say that Leopold and Mondega and even the Taj.
Places, yeah.
Because you used to hang around in that part of, Sobo, South Bombay, as they say.
The Kulaba area. Yeah. So that was crazy as well.
Yeah. So it was, I think, a sobering moment for us to see when a certain amount of time has passed after a tragedy like this, a global tragedy like this. That's when you have enough time to reflect on what happened. That is when I know that people have spoken about this, but your first thoughts go out to the victims, to the families of the victims, and then you think about the phenomenally brave people who work in the emergency services. As they say, that when something like this happens, most people run away from terror, we run towards it because we have to go and save. So the New York firefighters, I think, became everyone's superheroes because they were almost like going into a war zone, knowing that they could well be crushed under the debris and they may not make it back. But it is your duty and you have to do it. So I think 9/11.
I think one of the reasons we're actually reminiscing and talking about this is because we just yesterday started watching this Amazon Prime
Mumbai Diaries,
which is kind of brought back a few memories.
Which is about the attack you mentioned, 2008, November 2008. Yeah. So on that sober note, I think it's time to bid everyone farewell.
Bid adieu, farewell.
So long, adieu. Farewell. Off weed and say goodbye for another 2 weeks.
I'm sorry I mentioned it now.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have to watch Sound of Music all over again.
That is right.
Well, I think on that note we should say goodbye.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.